Kelsey, in your memoir, you recount these just harrowing details of your sister Karen's final moments. It's heartbreaking and it's deeply personal. And I wonder why you chose now to revisit this painful chapter in your life.
Right. It's interesting. I had this. I've integrated a lot with mediums and mediumship and spiritualists and all sorts of stuff. And
it's like psychic kind of stuff?
I wrote I produced a show called Medium years ago, which is very, very popular. But it was pretty much an outcropping of my desire to find out more stuff from that part of the existence, whatever you might call it. And so I've had a relationship with or traffic with different mediums throughout my lifetime. And sometimes they would, bring around Karen or they'd mention something. And I was always a bit, askance with it because I thought, well, do they know about it? Do they historically know about it? Or are they really channeling my sister? Is this real?
Yeah.
And then there's ways to start telling, when you're in a sitting, especially if it's really a blind sitting or not, if they've done some research. And, it's hard if they've done research for them to really be honest. But some folks, and I had a great pal that was a psychometrist. She would, hold something and get things out of it. And she said once, well, if I'm sitting there saying, hi, there's a will here, a will, I think will, and you're sitting there saying, oh yeah, it's William in my head, and you're not telling me, then you're being a jerk.
Right.
But if
that's
I'm
one of those throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
But if I'm like 70% there, that's pretty high. And that's what my standard became was if somebody's about 70% right, that's extraordinary if they don't know you. I mean, that's amazing. And so I've had a few remarkable things like that. And this one woman, Esther, that I was dealing with in the middle of a reading that was kind of constructed by a friend who said, oh, you should maybe talk with Esther. She's really good with things. But okay. So we scheduled a meeting, and it was a phone session. And she says, oh, your sister's here. She wants you to tell her story. I thought, wow. Because she didn't know what the story was at the time. And she said, oh. And then she sort of drifted off a bit, said, oh, yeah. She says, tell her story. So that was what generated the idea.
Yeah, wow.
After so long. And of course, I've spoken to Karen before and some of the aftermath of dealing with the tragedy and trying to live on and go on and carry her at the same time. But I never really looked at it through her story, and I thought that's pretty interesting. How am I going to do that? So sat down a couple of months later finally, and I started to write some notes. And I wrote about 8 or 9 pages of stuff, and I thought, oh, I guess I'm writing a book. So that's what it was. But
wow.
Yeah, it's 50 years later, and I think whatever if what I'm selling is true, and I think it is, Karen wanted me to unburden this finally, to be lighter.
Can you tell us what happened to Karen?
Yeah, she was abducted and then murdered, raped and murdered on July 1st, 1975. And I think she was with them for about 4 hours and then was murdered. But I was fairly graphic in the description of what I got from the police report, because I wanted to share some of it with people to have them understand what it was to experience, because I wanted to make sure that everything was honest, everything was true. And as I started to write the book, the relationship between me and the reader felt like I was taking a friend through this with me. And that sort of defined it all. At one point in the book, it was about maybe 60 pages in, I think, I actually wrote a letter to the reader, and said, thank you for being here. I've got you now, and take this journey with me if you like. You can stop too. I've always wanted people to feel free that they didn't have to continue. But it was a really emotional journey for me, and it was given more value because I started to realize there are other people who've experienced the same thing. There are those of us who share an experience that maybe I can bring some relief to, in the fact that I'm finding relief as well, and not to carry so much of it, because we did struggle for years with guilt about it, and that I wasn't there, that I couldn't stop it, and I think we all do that, who've lost people tragically. it's almost an absurdity, but we just have this. There's this muscle in us that says, "Wait a minute, you should have stopped this." So,
You were her older brother.
older brother, yeah.
So it's even.
Yeah.
I would imagine
It was definitive. It was definitive relationship. Right. Yeah, I'm supposed to take care of you. Yeah.
But it's, of course, now as a grown man, it's even still, I'm sure it is, but it's got to be, there's intellectually, well, of course I couldn't be with her 24/7 and protect her 24/7, but it doesn't really absolve you of the one time that well, I would imagine you spend 50 years going, what if I just met, I should have gone over there, just over and over
a million things.
Yeah, a million things.
And whatever, it doesn't need rational thinking to exist. It is simply how you feel. It's to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What happened to the killer?
Well, he's still in jail. The guy that was actually the guy that plunged a knife into her is still in jail. One of the other fellas that was involved is gone now, and I think the other one is gone as well. Although I had been told he left early. He was gone earlier. So it was really 3 men, and who were responsible for her abduction and rape and then murder. But the one, I guess, really wanted to kill her.
The book is very clear. I mean, these guys are just monsters. I know you're a man of faith. What do you make of this evil that is clearly real? I mean, you'd like to think like, people have reasons, or there's like, it's so rare, or this is, you want to make a reason for it because it's so senseless otherwise.
If you go to the framework of sort of basic Christianity, and I'm a Christian. I mean, I was raised as a Christian Scientist, which is a bit more metaphysical and a bit more esoteric in some ways. There is good and evil, and you just have to recognize that you can get sucked into one or the other, or drawn to one, sucked into another, I suppose. I've certainly flirted with dangerous times in my life, times that maybe I was in over my head, stuff that I was better off not knowing, but I felt I still needed to go through it, and maybe that's when you're open to maybe going a little darker and doing some things that hurt people. I feel pretty blessed that I didn't actually get there where I really destroyed anybody else or did something as vicious or violent as that. But you can lose focus. You can lose your life. You can lose your heart. You can lose your soul. You can actually become just a dark player, and I think they went there. I think that's where they were. And in fact, they even craved it. Now, whether or not that's God or Satan or, a lot of people, I've heard some people talk about, well, where was God, during the Holocaust? And others have rebutted it saying, well, and that makes you think man's a better idea than God? I mean, it's like, well, it's certainly man was the creator of that particular energy.
Sure.
Was he in Satan's thrall, if you want to reduce it to that kind of sort of metaphor? Yeah, maybe that's what's going on. I mean, I recently did a men's retreat with some guys. It's a Christian-based recovery for warriors, basically, Operation Recovered Warrior. And they allowed me to come because I don't have my common ground is not, warfare.
Yeah, right.
But when you realize what they're talking about is, your common ground is warfare because we're born into warfare here. This is on this plane. It's God and devil stuff, and that's battle.
It's kind of scary to think about it that way.
It is, I know. But
I never thought about it that way.
They encourage this idea that Christ is the greatest warrior because his weapon is love.
I see.
He is not a pussy.
Yeah,
which I love.
That's going to be the clip on.
I just watched.
Christ is not a pussy. Kelsey Grammer.
I watched. Well, I think that's it. It just makes me think of this movie called We Were Soldiers. Mel Gibson's film. It's terrific. But Sam. I'm afraid to forget his last name right now. But he's they have a scene together where Mel Gibson's worried about turning out like Custer. And he doesn't want to end up like that. And he says to him, "There's the one major difference between you and Custer is Custer was a pussy." It's like it's a wonderful moment. Jesus is the power, and that's if you fall into that place, you'd start to understand that maybe there are some things going on here that are not part of you.
I see.
And I think they were in that place to get back to it.
I hate to ask this question, but I think it's probably on a lot of people's minds. Are you, I mean, I imagine you're haunted by what her final moments were like, but isn't this somehow unfair? Because you have this wonderful person who you love and remember so much. I mean, she was 18. You remember 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were her older brother. You remember 18-ish years of how wonderful and beautiful and fun they were. And then it's kind of punctuated and possibly overshadowed by this horrible thing that was not done by them, but was done to them. And it just seems unfair that that's one of the main things you remember about this person. Their victimhood overshadows their life in some way. And you have to, it's probably somewhat of a struggle to cherish their life and not linger on the loss.
Right. It's a theme in the book, because I have been guilty of letting that be the final, memory of her,
right?
The definitive memory, and I think the book was meant for me to change that, and it did. It brought grief and celebration kind of in line with each other, because the grief was so overwhelming, and the celebration didn't exist really. I'd lost that. And the book helped me find it again, helped me find Karen again, and to remember her, which I talk about. But to remember somebody into the grace of the good that they left you and the good that you had with them, that's more important than the grief. The grief is forever; it's just there, imprinted on you. But it's only a crime if you allow the grief to overwhelm the imprint of the good, and that's what the book's about.
And that seems like such a struggle, of course. You built a life on commanding the room, your voice, presence, your name, everything. It seems like it would be tough to handle those moments where none of that works on maybe your own demons.
Yeah. That was hard. Success has been great. And I love my job. I love acting. I love it because it's like a discovery. For me, at least, it's a discovery of truth. It's a character, but it's still universal truth. If it's a good play, Shakespeare being one of the best. But if you have that opportunity to encounter what is a universal truth, you are supernatural, and that is a drug. I mean, that's an amazing way to live one's life, and to have it be punctuated by this sort of overwhelming grief that's always lingering. I mean, maybe the book was meant for me to be able to kind of let that go, to diffuse it finally. Mm-hmm. But it was always there, and it was always hard. And sometimes it would creep into my performances, but only when it was appropriate. I talk about the performance of Laertes rehearsing it when Gertrude tells him about his sister's death. And it just overwhelmed me. It was all Karen. It was all coming in. I didn't choose to do that. It just came. And that's what I mean, I guess, about that being open. And that's when, my dog ran up on stage and, started to lick my face and kiss me. So she was such a wonderful animal. But yeah, that's this book has helped me to come to terms with the fact that the grief was overwhelming, but not so that it would overwhelm the beauty of Karen. So.
You've described years of addiction and some self-destruction as a kind of punishment. Do you think you were trying to erase the grief, or maybe even preserve it in some way?
Yeah, good question. A pal of mine once said, he said, the cause of all grief, he said, the cause of addiction, he says, is unresolved grief.
Interesting.
I thought, it kind of holds up.
Mm-hmm.
If you really examine almost any situation where someone's stuck in something, it's grief for whatever was enough for them.
Sure.
As I've had some people look at me and say, you haven't been through so much. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, okay, that may be true.
Some people have it worse.
It was enough for me.
Yeah.
To mess me up.
Yeah.
Sure. It did.
That's a weird thing to say to someone.
Well, you fall in love with people that just know how to say terrible things.
They're pushing those buttons, man.
Like,
that's a horrible thing to say to someone.
You actually said that.
Wow.
I know. But I got through that one. It's fine.
Yeah. Jeez.
But let me get back to what
sure.
we were just on.
I was asking if you wanted to erase or preserve the grief.
It's an interesting idea. I think what I was really trying to do was just feel as much as I could feel. And I mean, I did some wonderful, crazy stuff. I loved the things I was doing. I mean, on a big bender or out one night with a bunch of guys, doing a lot of blow, whatever
Sure.
it was you were doing. We were having fun, and then it just stopped being fun.
Right. There's that weird switch moment, which I guess you only see in hindsight, where you go, "Oh, this was no longer fun."
Shucks.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would never take it away. I would never say. People said, "How could you do that to yourself?" Well, you know what? I was still working. Sometimes it was challenged. Some people were a bit annoyed that I seemed so messed up sometimes. But I always showed up for work. I mean, maybe a little tired, maybe a little bleary-eyed.
Sure. It's funny you mentioned that. There's a writer from, I guess it was Cheers, Dan O'Shannon. Does that sound right?
Dan, yeah.
So he said something like, and this is from Wikipedia, so God knows if this is accurate, but he would ooze into the studio, his life all out of sorts. Jimmy, I guess maybe a director, would say action, and he would snap into Fraiser and expound in this very erudite dialogue and be pitch perfect. And then Jimmy would yell cut, and he would ooze back into Kelsey, glazed over eyes, half asleep, going through whatever he was going through. It was the most amazing transformation I've ever seen, which is a weird way to end that particular paragraph, but I think that was it really shows like, yeah, you were on, and that probably made it harder for people to go, hey man, you maybe take it easy.
Yeah, right.
Because it's like, well,
there were a couple of moments like that which were great. Actually, I would usually take that to heart and give it my best shot, and then sometime in the middle of Frasier, the same kind of thing came up in the show Frasier after Cheers, and I dedicated myself to actually staying clean for quite a while, and I've never gone back to certain things. But I do still enjoy a cocktail now. But my big one was cocaine, and that was I haven't been near that since.
It's a tough one. I had my former producer. One of the things he said was, I've smoked and I've done cocaine. Smoking's harder to quit, but cocaine is like right behind it. and he's like, one is decidedly more fun than the other.
Right.
Not to glorify it or anything, but it's like, there's a reason people do it.
There's a reason you do it. It makes you feel like a god. It makes you feel like and you are having fun.
Sure.
And you're having fun with other people. So it's it has its own allure and its own fascination and appeal, and maybe that's part of the dark thing. I don't know. It's like, but always in the back of my mind was that God, that God thing.
I see.
I see. That was also always saying what I grew up as a kid who believed in Jesus, and it would always come in. There I was, and say, hey, calm down, relax a little bit. You're okay. We got this. And so it helped.
How does fame complicate recovery? It's hard enough when you're just a lawyer working your day job, but when people are like, "Oh, is that Kelsey Grammer over there?"
Well, if you know about him,
right. Or I guess now, back then it wasn't get out your phone and take a picture, so you had that going for you.
Yeah,
but now
at least that helped.
Yeah.
What is it? There's a great poem by Auden's poem. I think it's called Moon Landing, and he talks about how though these three are maybe no less brave or braver than Hector, at least Hector was spared the indignity of being covered on television.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you think, yeah, that's kind of how it is. That's like, I found out my sister was raped in a National Enquirer article.
Oh, that's horrible.
And that was horrible. And I never would have been there or even have it been written about if I weren't on television.
That's a good point. Yeah. Right.
So it was but it's what I got. You sacrifice your privacy once you become famous.
Yeah. Do you think that Hollywood has become more or less forgiving of personal flaws than when you started your career?
Well, gosh, probably a little less forgiving, honestly. By virtue of surviving as long as I have, I think there's a gentler wash for me now. It's more of a watercolor than a specific like a digital photograph. But let's face it. Somebody gets accused of something that they did 30 years ago, and suddenly they're written off. It's just insanity what's been going on. What nobody's human.
Especially if it's just an accusation, because you find out seemingly quite often later, oh, well, I'm not totally sure, or this didn't happen, or the person sues, countersues.
Well, I might have misstated that.
Yeah.
Well, and destroyed somebody.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, it's a funny time, and maybe we should take broader views of things we hear from time to time. We should believe women who are telling the truth.
I agree with that. Yeah.
We should believe the possibilities of things, but innocent until proven guilty is really important.
I will admit that like most people, my gut instinct is to go, oh my God, I knew it. The guy, wait, and then I go, no, I didn't know anything. First of all, I know nothing about this person. It's different when it happens to somebody you know and you go, I can't believe he would do that. And then you go,
oh, right.
Oh, wait.
I can't believe he would do that.
I can't believe he would do that. So, but then you're tempted to go, well, maybe I'm just a bad judge of character. Who am I to know? I don't know everything everyone's done in their life. I must have misjudged him. And then you're in this battle and then if you find out 3 months later that it was completely fabricated and he was being extorted for money, you're like, oh gosh, now I feel like a jerk for even giving it any credibility.
Thought, yeah.
Yeah, it's really,
so we're in a difficult time
tough.
that way.
Yeah.
I hope we move through that. Yeah.
It's going to get worse with AI. AI is going to make everything worse and better at the same time.
Well, great pictures. Yeah. But you know what's great about my kids? I mean, you know, the latest round, 12, 10, and 8, they always go, oh, that's AI.
Isn't that amazing? And I go, how do you know?
I know. And they dismiss it almost immediately, which is really smart.
It
is. Because they understand, oh, this is it's a perilous place where people are going to try to put out things that aren't true. And they kind of are already tuned into that. So I hope that's where we're heading.
Old?
Well,
I'll be online and I'll go, wow, that's impressive. And all these people on Reddit or whatever will go, that's AI. And I go, okay, I'm 45. This is one of those things.
I don't get it.
How do you know? And they go, well, the lighting is too perfect.
Yeah, they can always tell things.
Oh, yeah. Or like, look at the hands. And I go, they look like hands. No, they don't. That finger is bent in a weird way that's like nobody would hold their hand naturally. Yeah. And you go, yeah, you know what? You're right. So now I'm looking at hands. But by the time you figure that out, AI is like, got to make the hands better. Got to make the lighting better. Right. Make the lighting worse. So it's just like this rat race between the human brain, which mine is just done. Mine goes, that's a photo.
Yeah. Well, AI so far, I know we're getting to AGI, which is, self-generated, I guess. But AI is programmed by people.
Yeah.
And so what they know basically is what the people wanted it to know.
Right.
And so you have to be really careful about that as well, because there's leanings. Whenever you program something, that person has ideas that they want engendered in other people.
That's right.
So you got to be careful. But I am careful. And what's funny is it doesn't make me feel old. It makes me just feel I'm trying to think, because I like being a dinosaur.
Okay.
I like it because I know that the brain I've got was actually generated by the toil that I've put in.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been just plugged into something and then told this is what you need to think. I actually arrived at a lot of this stuff by virtue of hard work.
That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I like being over
I like
here.
that one. I had to learn stuff manually.
I've learned. I got through the Pleistocene, all on my own.
That's in the snow uphill both ways. That's that version for your and my generation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I had to go to school to learn how to do things.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
Whatever, man. You said that Karen's murder sent you into this spiral, but it also gave your career a structure. I wonder, did performing become some kind of therapy, or was it a way in some ways to avoid healing?
No, I think it's a devotion to healing. I got to live my healing. I got to focus on things. Having the personal sort of. Do you remember there's a book called "Stranger in a Strange Land"? There's an expression. I think Elon's done it. He's got the company called Grok. Grok. It's called grokking, right? You grok something. It meant you got something in a profound way. And that was coined in that book, Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein. Very popular in the 70s. Really popular. Wrote songs about it. Well, we don't really remember it, but I do. But that communion with tragedy that I had, that familiarity with my grandfather dying young, my father getting shot, my sister being murdered in the horrible way she was. It gave me an understanding of something that's the human journey, the human experience is what I'm good at. And I have, because of what I've lived, there's a kind of almost authority to it. So that as an actor, I would just uncover that and bring it to it. And I know that was probably helpful. That's what's, the irony of it is that the suffering was helpful for making something genuine or authentic, because you can't fool people as an actor. I mean, maybe AI can almost get there.
Eventually.
But really great acting is always going to be spontaneous and connected to the human experience. And I was given this breadth and depth of experience that would come through, and I think it gave me a sense of authority,
That's an interesting way to look at it for sure. Yeah, that makes sense, right? The broader your life experience, for better or for worse, the more connected you can be to different emotions or whatever situations. What's a lie people told you about grief, or that you thought you knew about grief that you believed for too long?
Time heals all wounds.
Yeah, I literally wrote, I was like, I wonder if he's going to say that, because that is something I think a lot of people find out is not necessarily true.
Just ain't true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's still, you abide with it, but it's not going away.
Do your kids think that you're, I mean, I know they don't, right? They don't think, oh, my dad's such a legend. I wonder,
They
like,
think I'm a legendary screw up.
Are you like, what percentage is it like, oh, my dad's pretty awesome, and what percentage of it is like, he won't stop quoting Shakespeare at dinner, I'm not inviting any friends over?
Right. Well, I do try to spare them too much stuff unless it's not such a poignant moment, like such an ironic alignment that I say, I got to tell you this line.
Yeah.
So I don't do it too often, but once in a while I'll sit them down and read them some Shakespeare.
It's funny to think about. Like, nobody, all dads think, I'm going to be the cool dad because I have this cool life and career, and then it's like, never.
I'm so uncool. I mean, it's like my older kids are, I'm still trying to figure out what they actually think of me. I mean, I don't really. My two older daughters is like, we have a pretty good relationship, and then we don't have a good relationship, and then we have a great relationship, and it's sort of like, it's just whatever it is. I'm not cool.
No,
that's the way it is.
One day you'll be, surrounded by family at some, hopefully at a joyous time, and they'll go, you're not as much of a lame-o as I thought. And it'll be like the happiest moment of your life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my 8-year-old, James, actually was talking to me by the pool 2 years ago in upstate. And we're sitting having a nice conversation about, how to do a certain thing or whatever. And he stops for a second and he says, you're all right. I like spending time with you. God bless you.
Yeah. You're not as cool as Captain Underpants or whatever.
Yeah, right,
SpongeBob.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a real highlight for me.
Oh man, I can relate. Yeah, my son is 5, and he's like, "You're so cool," and I'm like, "Oh, soak it up, because you're not going to believe
it's not
that."
happening forever.
No. All my friends who have older kids are like, "Just no, seriously, take a mental snapshot of this, because you will never hear that in about 3 years." You spent decades as an actor, from Fraiser Crane to intense dramas, Broadway musicals. At what point did you feel like, I'm successful, genuinely? And
oh yeah, that was about 2 or 3 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. It takes. Maybe I'm slow. I mean, I probably am.
Okay.
But I was sitting somewhere, and you could tell that their regard for me was genuine. Mm-hmm. And the guy just said, "You're a legend." Mm-hmm. I thought, that's a really weird thing to be told. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But when I started to think about it, I thought, well, I'm good at what I do. And okay, all right, it's time. Maybe I just put away this, this self-effacing crap and just said, yes, I'm good at what I do, and I've earned my place here. And that's a pretty decent feeling. That's okay.
I can imagine. But do you think you would have believed or internalized that 10 years ago if somebody said it, or would you think, this guy's buttering me up?
I probably just would have thought, I'm not there yet. I don't know, but maybe by virtue of the same thing that's sort of fed that myth, I guess, is it takes a lot of time. It takes a long time to finally say, yeah, okay, I did something.
Did that feeling match up with what you imagined being successful would feel like?
No, it still doesn't. What's really fun, what's weird, I'm going to reprise the role of Beasts, right, in the next job I do. We're going to London in June to shoot the next Avengers film.
Wow.
And
is that a lot? Were you allowed to keep that? I didn't know. That's not a secret?
It's been announced.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So I wanted to play that part again for a long time. It was a personal sort of like tragedy to me. Like 20 years ago, I played it in X-Men. The Last Stand, I think it was called. And we went to Cannes Film Festival. I decided I chartered a boat and everything. I mean,
Cool.
I'm going to celebrate this moment.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. And then they said to me, we've got this whole new direction we're going in for the franchise. And I'm thinking, this is great.
Yeah.
And they said, we're going back in time. You're not in it.
Ah.
I was like, that is so messed up.
Yeah, could have led with that.
Right. But, so when recently they released The Marvels, the film The Marvels, I guess it did okay. I mean, I don't know if the response was good, but the response to Beast when he showed up, they called and said, "Come on down, let's shoot something. Do you mind doing one of those like Easter egg things that they do in the credits?"
Oh, like a cameo, like Stan Lee used to do. Yeah.
So there I am, and the response was really good. They called me in a little while later and said, "We want you to do the role again."
Nice.
So maybe that actually made me feel like I finally made it.
It's so funny. That is a great character for you as well, because it's like this sort of like super tough guy, but then his hobby is reading books
He's
and poetry.
intellectual. He's my guy, right?
Yeah, it's
it
your
was
guy.
right up my alley.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's super cool. I'm excited for that. Most actors struggle to hit any breakout role. I mean, that's the name of the game, right? You made a few characters, but namely one, Dr. Fraiser Crane, that spans generations. Again, not to make you feel, not to put the dinosaur label back on you.
No, it's okay.
What did you do differently from others in your field, do you think, to make that happen? Or is that kind of a luck function?
I think there is a kind of a luck function that may be somewhat providential at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Auden again. I'm going back. He always believed in luck, but his definition of luck meant that you were aligned with a spiritual energy that was for you, meaning God. He was a Christian, but most people don't really know that about him. He was one of that little group in Oxford who decided they were going to prove that Jesus didn't exist, and then they all became Christians.
Interesting.
Really,
wow.
Yeah, it's fascinating. C.S. Lewis being one of them, and Tolkien and Auden, and it's fascinating. I read something about C.S. Lewis just recently. He says, "You don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body." I thought, wow,
those guys, man.
That is something.
Those are great brand ambassadors for
absolutely
Christianity.
for faith. Yeah, no,
man,
it's really huge. But this idea of divine providential luck, where you peg away at something, and as he says, peg away at it honestly every day. Perhaps by the time death pounces his stumping question, I shall just be beginning to understand the difference between daylight and moonlight. Which I love.
These guys are like on another level.
Yeah.
What's the difference between playing a character people merely like
and see, when I say that to my kids, they'll just think,
they go,
he's gone.
Yeah,
he's gone. We're leaving.
Where's the Xbox remote? Yeah.
Go ahead.
What's the difference between playing a character people merely like and a character people want to watch for literally decades?
Well, the thing that Fraiser did, and this happened for the first time I read the sides, I went by the Gulf and Western building, which is now the Trump Tower, or one of them, whatever, and it has a little globe out in front on Columbus Circle.
Oh, that's in every movie, that thing. Yeah,
right, yeah. That's where Paramount used to have its offices. They were owned by the Gulf and Western Company at the time, so it was called the Gulf and Western Building. So I went upstairs, and they handed me these sides, just bits of a scene, pieces of a scene, sides, and I read them, and I went and visited my buddy Stanley. And Stan said, "What do you think of this thing?" I said, "Well, the key to this character is that he loves her completely with his whole heart." And that was the key to Fraiser. That was right. His love for Diane was so it was such a first for him. And an intellectual guy who was completely in the, well, I used the word before, thrall of love. Surrender to it, complete surrender to it, where his own identity was lost as a result. And that is what has defined him, that ability to love deeply, wholly, in an instant, and be mistaken and make a mistake. And then watching him unravel, because watching Fraiser unravel is what's been fun. Watching him not be in a relationship was what makes him fun, having them not work out. Mm-hmm. And so, but he soldiers on with this optimism, which, as I described this once to my friend Brad, who's in the book, he finally said, "Well, Kels, that's you." So I guess this character is me in a lot of ways.
Sure. Well, all the best characters, right, are just like a couple degrees to the left or the right of the actual actor, like Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man. Everyone's like, oh, he's such a good actor. And it's like, well, if you know him in real life, like he's just maybe not a billionaire engineer, but the rest of it's kind of
pretty much like
nails it. Yeah. When younger actors come to you for advice, what's the thing that maybe they don't expect you to say, but that they need to hear?
I'm not sure. I always try to encourage them. I never say that you're on a bad path because it's the best thing in the world. It's just not necessarily going to lead to riches or anything else like that. But it's a beautiful way to spend one's life and one's career, sort of as an avocation and vocation at the same time. But I always tell them, if you want to be an actor, act. Go act somewhere. I mean, you got to get, it's not going to happen. You're not going to. I've always told them you're not going to get an agent till you don't need one. And
that's funny.
That's just the truth. That's just the way it is.
That is so. Even in the podcasting industry,
of course,
it's like,
no,
you're dead to me. And then it's like, hey, we would love to help you.
Once you're doing good, they're fine.
Why would I give you 10%? At this point, no.
Yeah. But that's really important, and it means you got to go. You got to get in the game. You got to go to New York or go where you're going to go. Any town has a way to find somewhere to act. Volunteer to play. Be a fireman and go do a play at night. Whatever you have to do, get through it. I mean, I did demolition works, construction work. I mean, I did
That's a funny
dozens
visual.
of things.
Just Kelsey Grammer out there with a sledgehammer quoting Shakespeare and C.S. Lewis, and the guys are like, turn the jackhammer up louder. I'm sick of listening to this guy.
I'm so tired of this crap, this guy. But yeah, you must immerse yourself in whatever that is. And then hopefully the universe responds, because it will try to.
Yeah, one way or another, I suppose. You've been very open about your political views, support for Donald Trump. I wonder, how do you navigate public perception in an industry that, for one thing, often leans differently, but it seems like that's a minefield in Hollywood. It's like, oh, you're the guy who's on the other side of the aisle.
Yeah, I think people have always. I mean, I know it doesn't fit with a narrative of, and I hate use the word narrative, way too used. There's a compulsion almost at this point to just say anybody that thinks Trump's doing a good job is stupid. So I don't come across as stupid.
Or something.
Yeah, or a fascist. Yeah, I don't come across as any of those things. I'm a reasonable guy who. I think that the movement, the focus, the direction of what Trump is involved in, his ego aside and all the stuff that you want to just latch onto and hate, is more aligned with what I believe America should be doing. And it should be taking care of itself and looking after people and not taxing so much. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes along for the ride. But prosperity is generated by, protecting the homeland. So these are things that I actually align with. And I don't do it in a way that's belligerent or hateful to people, I hope. Are they hateful to some of the things I believe? Maybe they are. I mean, I'm also a guy who's very cautious about abortion and stuff like that because, I mean, I've had life taken from me, destroyed right in front of me, and had some difficult circumstances. Do I believe that you should outlaw abortion? No, but I do think there should be some limits and some reasonable approach to the idea that, this is a life and it's precious, because in my experience, the most precious things to me were the things that lived and that life was taken. And so that's where I am.
I cherry-picked this, so forgive me, but in a 2016 interview with The Guardian, you said, the person I admire most is Vladimir Putin because he's so comfortably who he is. So that may have aged like milk, and I'm wondering what you think
I don't know.
Now.
I remember why I said it.
Yeah, I got no context. I was just like, I'm going to
at the time, I was actually considering trying to play him.
I think it's funny you should say that. I was just going to say Kelsey Grammer is Vladimir Putin. I can see it.
Yeah, no, it just seemed to me like that would be a really interesting guy to play. And that's 2016. That's when I started thinking, well, maybe I would like to play Vladimir Putin. He's kind of a fascinating guy. And what is the quotation that said that? I said he's the most.
It just said because he's so comfortably who he is.
Yeah, I think he doesn't make apology for who he is, and I think that's an interesting thing to play. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's a nice guy. It's like I'm not saying, I admire him so much, but I admire someone who is so comfortably in themselves. and he is one of those creatures. Interesting to play a guy like that. I used to love when I'd see him walk on his horseback with his shirt off.
Yeah, that's the famous.
Well, what is his thing?
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, he doesn't look that good. I'm sorry. And I thought, well, but he obviously must think he does. So somewhere in that, how do you get to that place? And I admire a brain that goes there. So it wasn't meant to be some shocking, alarming like alignment with a lunatic.
Right.
Is he a lunatic? I don't know. Is he a crafty, political, maybe fascistic mindset? I don't know. I think he loves Russia. I think he wants it to be what it once was. Is he an enthusiast? I'm trying to think of a better word for it. Is he a zealot? Yeah, maybe. Maybe he's a zealot. So, which is interesting, if you think about zealots can usually be defeated because they don't see clearly.
I definitely agree with that. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I think you're onto something.
And that's but so anyway, I'm still fascinated by him. I would be interested in playing him, but what he's perpetuating in Ukraine and all that. But this whole Ukraine thing is a very dodgy situation.
It is a giant mess that if we had 3 more hours, we
could certainly dive in.
Yeah.
I mean, on its face, it does seem there's a horrible thing going on, but there's also there's a history there of being used as sort of a bank account for deception, and I think it's a really bad thing that was going on there. A lot of money laundering, all kinds of people. All kinds of political people and
not touching
all
that.
kinds of governments. And maybe that's all part of getting clean. Maybe it's getting cleaned up now. Maybe that's what's really happening. But that there's a human price that goes along with it is horrible. The devastation is just insane. I mean, when Trump does talk about rubble, he gets rubble. He understands construction. He actually really does. And rebuilding that kind of stuff is really, really hard. And yet important. So, he gets the value of real estate. Yeah.
You said every interaction, every person who we interact with and meet and talk to is working with us together on a soul level, working toward a higher intention. Each person is a pathway to our highest good. What do you mean by that? And is this podcast perhaps the exception?
Well, that was actually my understanding of what this thing, radical forgiveness, is. A concept of radical forgiveness, to see that even in the most tragic set of circumstances or even hostile circumstances, that person may be guiding you to your higher good, to a better person than you are right now. And that's been hard for me. That's my description of it was basically based on the fact how difficult it was to kind of embrace that. But now there is a kind of wisdom in in hindsight that says, well, yeah, maybe that guy lifted me in some way, lifted me to another level in understanding and in fulfillment and in fight. I mean, I've been a fighter. I've fought pretty hard through a lot of these things, and actually I like the fight. So it's a weird, value. But for instance, the man that came into our house, I speak about him, Bob, when we were still teenagers and my grandmother was spending time with him. He was a real challenge, and he was a real jerk. But maybe he made me strong. I mean, I ended up throwing him out of the house one day. Mm-hmm. I was 16 years old. I'm lifting a grown man, and I ejected him from our home.
That must have been kind of a badass feeling at the time, especially.
It was surreal. Yeah, but it was also like, I had to do that. Mm-hmm. Would I have done it if he was a great guy? No.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. What do you want most people to remember you for, both as an actor and as a person?
Well, I'll tell you what I usually answer to this question. It's borrowed from Gregory Peck. I heard him once accept an award, and I loved him. So he said, "My ultimate goal, Kelsey, is to say that any time a person spent watching my work was time well spent." I'd like to live for that. But now, having done Karen, I'd like to think they'd remember my sister and remember Karen and remember the love we had. And I think that's that'd make me really happy. In fact, I had a dream the other night where I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool if people remember Karen longer than they remember me? So,
Kelsey Grammer, thank you very much.
thanks, man.